Hey everyone, I just wanted to take a moment to say a proper hello again to everyone listening and watching. I'm Jason, host of the Curious Goldfish Podcast, a music podcast about more than music. I want to say thank you for everyone who has listened, watched, and shared. Your support is appreciated so much. But I need to apologize to my audio only listeners. I've been cranking out video episodes for YouTube so much in 2025 that I've neglected to do proper introductions for all of these conversations. But starting now, new episodes will be back in your audio feed, and I'll also be uploading the backlog of interviews so you won't miss a single thing. Moving forward, all video interviews will be available to watch on both YouTube and Spotify. So if you haven't already, please hit subscribe to both, and please tell your friends and family, especially those who enjoy learning about new music and the stories behind the songs. Thanks so much for sticking with me. I'm really excited about all the great conversations on the horizon.
I kept making connections. I mean, in addition to my grandpa, my dad, my daughter, there's a little piano interlude in the middle of the album. And that's actually my maternal grandma. I want to say a couple weeks, but at the very least a couple months before she passed away. But it really brought music back to its very functional nature of just this human experience for oneself, a way to connect with oneself. And it made me feel connected, again, to my own heritage to have her in the record. My sister is a piano player. I don't know why I've never asked her to play piano on any Steel Wheels recording. She's a great piano player. And so between sibling, daughter, dad, and grandparents on both sides, it's stocked full of family.
Welcome to Curious Goldfish, a podcast community where music and curiosity come together through interesting conversations with the music makers of our world. I'm your host, Jason English. You can find Curious Goldfish in all the major podcast and social media platforms. And of course, we have all of our content on our website, curiousgoldfish.com. With decades of accomplishments as frontman of the Steel Wheels under his belt, Trent Wagler decided it was time to release a solo album because some songs are just too personal to sing with others. Trent's storied history is deeply woven into American roots music. Now with his album, This Might Be My Prime, he shares an incredibly personal journey featuring collaborations with his father, daughter, and sister, alongside the heartfelt inclusion of recordings from his grandparents, influences that are undeniable. We also get a sneak peek at the Steel Wheels' upcoming self-titled album, and Trent shares the fascinating depths of his songwriting process. Tune in for a conversation exploring heritage, creativity, and the journey of an artist that is for sure in his prime. From Harrisonburg, Virginia, here's Trent Wagler. Let's dive in. Trent, I appreciate your time, man. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Good to be here.
Well, good. So we're here at basically the beginning of summer 2025. You've got a lot going on with your first solo album in a long time, on the heels of a music festival that the Steel Wheels put on. So I guess at this point in the summer, like what does that look like at the rest of the summer this year? Is it different than usual, or is it kind of more of the same?
Well, right now it's like just a deep breath. I'm literally talking to you after yesterday moving out of the camper out at the music festival, Red Wing Roots, that we're the host of, and it was the 12th festival that we've hosted out there. So it's always like a deep breath, and then I can really start to get the rest of the summer into focus. The band does have a good bit of touring. In fact, the next show we play is with the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra, which is going to be its own little trip. Uh, but yeah, it's it's always a feeling of accomplishment when we finish the festival, and kind of feels great because the band put a lot of time into a lot of music. We play 5 sets over the course of the weekend, and after that, it feels like we're hitting our stride, and all the other festivals the rest of the season just feel easy in comparison. Uh, and no, I'm really pumped about where we're at. I just released the solo record. We have a new record that we're working on releasing. It's a prolific time for the band and for me, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Okay, awesome. Well, congrats on all of
Thanks.
that. So your 12th year at the festival, how many bands joined you guys this year?
I think they said it was 50 bands total,
Okay, well
so
that's a big thing. Yeah,
a lot of people, yeah.
yeah. Well, are you still based in Harrisonburg?
I sure am.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So not that you care, but little story here. So my first job was a journalist at a little hometown newspaper in Winchester, Virginia, called the Winchester Star.
Yes.
So I was there in 97 to 99, and it was my first
Wow.
job out of college as a little journalist. And, I learned so much in that job, and I loved the Shenandoah Valley. I mean, I loved it. And one of my first assignments, they sent me down to cover what I think is still around, but it was called the Shenandoah Valley Music Festival,
Yeah.
Orkney Springs,
Yeah.
which I think is that the same spot that you guys do yours?
No, we're in a place called Natural Chimneys in Mount Solon, Virginia, but we've played the Shenandoah Valley Music Festival. Even though it's named a music festival, as you probably found out when you were there, it's more like a series. They do shows throughout the summer. But man, that's a beautiful spot, and yeah, long history of great lineups.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it yeah, I was actually expecting something like, not a Bonnaroo, but, something like that, but it's a little bit more classical.
Yeah, yeah.
They have all sorts of genres, but anyway, yeah, I love that job. Winchester was great, and, just probably an hour north on I-81
Yeah,
from where you're at. So, no,
that's right.
that's awesome. So you're lead songwriter, lead singer for the Steel Wheels. After all these years, can you believe it? It's crazy.
Mhm.
And it's awesome that you've got a new album out. I guess your last one was basically, it was called Sideways, right? It was released.
Yeah.
Was it last year?
Boy, oh boy. Uh, 2023, I think.
So it's been a couple years.
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
cool. What's the if you can give us a sneak peek, is there a theme? Is there a certain inspiration?
Into the Steel Wheels new record? Yeah. I think one of the biggest through lines is we've been a band for 20 years, and that doesn't necessarily find its way into the songs per se, but the process for sure. We decided to record back here in Virginia, which the last few records we haven't done that. And I always feel like the location, the place you're in really has an impact on the sound. And for those of us who still live here in the valley, we were sleeping in our own beds, getting out to the studio each morning, had a very livable schedule. Uh, but we also followed a process with our producer, Dan Goodwin, um, of like approaching the studio each morning with a new song and trying to see that song all the way through in a day. And we didn't have demos going into the studio. We were really like learning the song and then trying to approach it throughout the day with a lot of fresh creativity, a lot of live playing, and trying to lean into the fact that we've been a band that's played together for a really long time, and lean into the hopefully the thing you can really hear in the recordings is the sound of musicians who have really listened to each other for that long and started to put their voices and their instruments together in a real symbiotic way. So that to me is I have a lot of pride about that process, I think. If it just felt so special in the moment, and every time I hear the recordings, it takes me back to that. I hope that translates to an audience that wasn't there with us, you know? Um, but yeah, the the music is, I think, also a really good representation of our band over that 20-year span because we started very, very acoustic and stripped down as more of a string band, really feeling those Appalachian roots. And there's a good, I would say it's really half and half. It's like there's a lot of songs on this record that feel that way. And then there's a good half of the record that feels a little bit more pop infused and bigger production with more electric instruments and some different sensibilities. So it's a good range. It feels like we're ready to present it as this kind of 20-year opus of like, this is the Steel Wheels.
That's so cool. So what's the timing of that, do you think, in terms of releases and stuff?
That's another thing we're talking about. We're throwing around the idea of releasing the full record in September, physical product only, and then kinda taking the model, almost the model of, like, movies in theaters and saying, like, "You want the album, it's right here. You can buy it online. We'll send it to you, or you come to our show, purchase it. It'll be on streaming after it's out of the theaters." You know what I mean? Kinda like coming to your video store, um, but yeah, so the hope is we're gonna have that ready for September. So it's kinda coming up pretty soon, really.
Yeah, yeah. Is that model inspired by another band or another artist, or did somebody say, "Hey, let's try this"?
Yeah, I don't think we're the first band to do it, but it wasn't like we saw a particular artist do it. Our our team was just trying to talk about how do we wanna play with these, the music business is upside down, and we don't know what's what, and I think to a certain extent, it's us wanting to put focus on the album, which is hard to do on streaming, frankly, you know, and we're actually gonna end up releasing on streaming possibly in various little chunks like we have done in the past, but we also wanna just present it first and foremost in the form that we really thought about it the whole time, which was a complete collection.
Awesome. All right. Does it have a name yet?
Our working name is self-titled, The Steel Wheels. Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So we're gonna get into your solo album that just came out, obviously. But just one last question, kind of related to the Steel Wheels. So the song that I think it might have been the first, it's how I was introduced to you all a number of years ago. And I think it has about 90,000 plays or something on Spotify. You could probably credit me for about 21,000 of those. But anyway, it's called The Ghost of Myself.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not, I think you've got some that have 2 million streams or a million streams. So it's not your most
Sure.
popular, but there's a fair number of recordings of it on YouTube and stuff. But I just, first off, great song.
Thank you.
I think you were the writer behind that. I guess can you just give me the headline on that, and then I have a couple probably follow-up questions. But that song's meant so much to me. Do you remember where you wrote it, how you wrote it?
Yeah. I That one was inspired by a story I was listening to on the radio about someone losing their memory and and basically falling victim to a disease where they were semi-aware, they were losing some of their faculties, and it sorta grabbed my imagination of something that I hadn't thought a lot about, which was how aware are you when you're losing your own sense of self? And I have been, my own grandfather had dementia and Alzheimer's, and I saw him through that. He was a very pleasant, uh, just beautiful person right into the end, but I know there's many stories of people going various directions and really changing from that person you had known. But it was that sense of, like, starting to wonder what would it feel like, it would that kinda torture of feeling like I know that I don't know and that I'm missing things, and that's where that song started from.
Yeah. Okay. That's amazing. I guess
Mm,
so. Yeah, it's like the disconnectedness of your own identity and things
yeah,
like that. I guess what you repeat though, which I think is so, I don't know. It's there's that, and then it's like, you say I need you, right?
yeah,
Who's the you in that scenario? Is it yourself?
uh, great question.
All right. Well,
I mean, I this is the part of songwriting that I absolutely love, is continuing to allow that to be open for interpretation. I think as I sing the song, I often on stage am thinking about it being a song I'm singing to a crowd. It's it changes that meaning to a sense of, like, I need as a performer, I need you. I need this group. We need this. We need to be together and experience art together to feel connected. And so in that way, that's what I'm often thinking about when I'm performing it these days. But yeah, I think it could be if it was very literal and taken very literal, it could be about caretaker or the people around a person as they're losing their own faculties, or it could be that sense of I need myself, and I'm trying to uh, grab hold of that competence and that confidence that I've had and that I've known as myself. Yeah, that can get real deep into the like psychological ego.
thanks for that. I've always, the fact that I can ask you that is amazing to me. So thank you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for listening.
So the new album is This Might Be My Prime,
Yes.
which is interesting. I don't know how old you are. I turned 50 last year. It was the best year of my life. So I'm like,
Nice.
okay, well, this might be my prime. I guess what's the origin of the title?
Well, I wrote a song called My Prime, has that line in it. I had the idea pretty early on to try to get my dad and my daughter to sing that song with me. Um, my daughter's 20, my dad's 75, and I just thought it was an interesting idea, again, to hear that message from 3 different generations and think about what that means. And at the end of it, for me, the song is really written to grab hold of the moment we're in, no matter how old you are, no matter what that moment is, and try to remind yourself that we can't take any of these moments for granted. And so if you continually think this might be the best we get, this might be the best night we get with my parents, then I really want to listen to that story and I want to stay curious. If it's the best moment I get with my daughter when she's coming home from college, I better be present and try to really be in that moment. And so that idea of continually thinking this might be my prime, no, now this might be, is kind of the real message of it. And I thought it was a fun joke, given that, yeah, I'm in my mid 40s and it's very easy to sort of talk about being over the hill or whatever that might be, uh, kind of putting it out there as like, well, no, maybe I'm in my prime. So,
I guess you've been doing music a long time. Can you believe that you're in your mid 40s? And do you look at the next 20 years as hopeful, or is this like, oh my gosh, this is freaking you out a little bit?
um, in terms of my own Making music, I'm excited and I'm hopeful. In terms of the world in the next 20 years, I don't know. In terms of the music industry and how my songs are received or how they fit into a larger context, I don't really have much control over that stuff. So, yeah, all in all, over the things I can control, I absolutely love writing songs. I enjoy recording, and that's the stuff that I'll be able to keep doing whether anybody else is there to listen to it or not.
Right. That's great. No, that's good. I guess, how long have you been thinking about doing this? And is it hard to do amidst all the other things you have going on with the steel wheels?
Yeah, I've been talking about a solo recording off and on for over 10 years probably. And in that time, I think I've always set aside certain songs as like, well, I mean, some of them just felt very personal to me. Some of them just never quite felt like they worked as a band song. And as they started to take shape together, it started to feel really clear that this had a certain identity. And again, when I'm up there, I've written and we've recorded plenty of pretty personal songs with the Steel Wheels as well. And I'm happy to go into those stories on stage. But every once in a while, there's something that if I felt like I went into it and the other guys are standing up there on stage and it's not their story, I just feel like it kinda puts them in an awkward place, and I wanted an opportunity to still put these songs somewhere. So it just felt like the right time. We had I mean, it was a very busy winter in the sense that I we had a recording session with the Steel Wheels to start this record that we're about to put out in October. Then we took a little break with that. I started recording this in November and finished it in December, and then we went back in the studio in January and finished the Steel Wheels record. So it was kinda like recording solid, for me in these 2 different projects, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I loved the whole experience.
Do you plan to do solo shows, or do you plan to include kind of a solo set during a steel wheel show?
Yeah, for now, the guys have been really supportive of it, which is awesome too. And for now, I've been playing at least like one song in some of the shows that we've been playing over the last few months leading into the release. And I imagine that'll continue for a little bit. I do have some solo shows here and there, but usually I'm not trying to travel much more than I already do with the band, frankly. So if I get some opportunities to play solo shows, which come up every now and then, I'll do it. And now I have something to talk about it and a particular collection of songs to play, which is also a motivation for me because sometimes if I play a solo set and it just comes across as like the Steel Wheels light because it's just me but doing all the Steel Wheels songs, that sometimes feels underwhelming. But if it's a project that's supposed to be solo and that's the way it was conceived, it feels a little more whole. And I started a local series called the Living Room Concert Series here, where actually I do a little interview. It's almost like a podcast on stage, but I bring in an artist. I do a few songs to open the show, and then I interview them. And it happens at a local theater in Harrisonburg. And so I I conceived of that a few years ago, and it's also nice again. I have that opportunity to play a few shows here and there just around town.
You may have alluded to this. It sounds like you have songs that you write, and it's like, okay, this is probably a better fit, just kind of keeping myself, or better fit for the band or whatever. I guess, knowing that you were going to do an album, did you write songs then knowing that they were going to be on the album?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a mixture. I think some of these songs I definitely held back and thought, this is definitely just me. Here For It is one of those songs on the record that came very directly and felt very personal in sort of a relationship way with my partner and I, that I just felt like when I sing that song, it puts me in my basement during the pandemic, going through some really hard stuff. And again, even if I never talk about that on stage, it just felt like this belongs there. But there were also songs that I wrote, and initially I brought them to the band and just said, here's a pile of songs. What do you guys think? What are you attracted to? What feels good? I don't usually write a song with any particular intention of like it's where it's going to end up. Just like I'm not the kind of writer that sets out to say this is going to be a country vibe, or this is, I just don't usually do that intentionally. Obviously there's loads of influences and lots of styles that I pull from, but I don't like getting in my head that much when I'm trying to create it, because then I'm just thinking and comparing to, oh, that sounds like Chris Christopherson, or that sound, it's no longer, it doesn't feel like it's a pure creative endeavor anymore. So in the same way, I'm not usually thinking, oh, the Steel Wheels need a real upbeat banger, and so we're going to do it. It's usually, if I've written 15 songs, then maybe there's a banger in there. But we've tried over the last few records, I often am trying to come to this moment in the studio where I have at least 30 songs, and that then allows us all to kind of take a big look at the songs, and hopefully 25 of the 30 are like good songs, and then we can just start to shape and take and say, well, hey, these two could really create a theme together. They're almost siblings on a record, and these two are a little too close in this way, either tempo or vibe or whatever, and so we'd have to choose one or the other. We couldn't do both maybe on this album. So there's some of those things that come in to play. But yeah, for the solo record, I think it sometimes takes me some time to digest what the songs are even about, and a lot of these ended up feeling like, oh, this really hangs together in sort of the place that I'm at as an individual, as a mid-40s white dude in America playing music in Virginia. And it felt good to, so like there's a song about coming home and feeling a little lost. The first song on the album, which is actually preceded by a little recording of my grandfather talking. And my grandpa, the backstory on that is my grandpa grew up Amish and wasn't allowed to have musical instruments in his family or in that tradition. And so he was talking about that, and I bookended the album with him talking about that at the front end, and then he and I playing an old gospel song as the very final song. And those were recordings I've had for years, but I felt like that was a fun package to sit there with my song that I had my dad, my daughter singing on, and kind of a way to paint a bigger picture of family and of music and the way it functions both for us and with us putting it out there for others.
No, that's awesome. I mean, what's interesting about that is that I'm no expert and no historian, but you live a couple hours north of Bristol, and my understanding is that's kind of how music was made, 120 years ago with the Carters and where it all kind of began, right? I guess. Do you think it was that sort of an innate inclination that you had to do, or is that just kind of part of being a Virginia musician?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think about that connection in the process of this. I think once I started putting some of these things together, I kept making connections. And I mean, in addition to my grandpa, my dad, my daughter, some of the other, perhaps just by the liner notes you wouldn't know because of the names being different, but there's a little piano interlude in the middle of the album, and that's actually my maternal grandma. Just a couple, I want to say a couple weeks, but at the very least a couple months before she passed away. And my mom was taking care of her, and it was a particularly hard night for Grandma, and she hadn't woken up as early as she often would have, and my mom was getting concerned, and all of a sudden she heard the piano, and my grandma was there playing, turning the pages of this hymn book and just playing through these hymns. And she said later that when she's struggling, especially, she'll wake up and the first thing she'll do is play piano, because it just gets her mind and her hands connected and awake. And I just thought, not only was that a beautiful memory, but it also spoke to me, a musician who's performing for other people and trying to dazzle them with all this, stuff. But it really brought music back to its very functional nature of just this human experience for oneself, a way to connect with oneself. And it made me feel connected, again, to my own heritage to have her in the record. And then, in addition to that, it's like a light went off halfway through the recording, because the engineer and co-producer and I were talking about adding some piano to a few tracks. And I was like, my sister is a piano player, and she lives in Kansas. I don't know why I've never asked her to play piano on any Steel Wheels recording. She's a great piano player. So I sent some songs to her, and then we had this fun process of chatting about the arrangements over the phone. And she went into a studio there in Wichita and recorded on, I think, 4 of the songs and just put down some beautiful piano. So Kim Bontrager, Miriam Headings don't share that Wagler name, but they're on the liner notes. And so between sibling, daughter, dad, and grandparents on both sides, it's stocked full of family. And that's also why I wanted to put in these childhood photos, and it's also why I decided to go under my birth name, Trenton Wagler, even though I've been known as Trent since I was about 10. It just felt like, again, kind of a connection to my origins.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I mean, a family affair. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, so on that note, how old were you when the music just hit you and you're like, okay, I want to sing. I want to write songs. I want to play.
Yeah. First, I would say music was a huge part of my upbringing. My dad and his 3 brothers sang gospel quartet music in the church growing up. And so I was pulled up on stage when I was probably 6 or 7 years old, singing with those guys along with some of my cousins. Just a thing we did in our family. I learned how to harmonize at a pretty young age. And so I was lucky, I think, to see music as just a part of life rather than I feel like, if your main experience with music is it's like something you do at school or you go to lessons for. Obviously, I did it a lot in church, but a lot of it was just integrated into family life. And so I didn't study music in college, although I did take some voice lessons, I guess. But I was at probably age 14. I think I had a girlfriend break up with me in high school, and I was writing poems. I snagged this tardy slip sheet from my English teacher's desk, and I wrote these one-page poems about all my heartbreak. And that was the first time it dawned on me when I went home to strum a few chords to these horrible little love poems. And I just loved that experience of singing those feelings. And it's been a form of therapy, I guess, for me ever since.
I mean, that is so cliche as the teenage heartbreak,
Totally.
That's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so what's interesting about kind of going back to the songwriting is you're so prolific. Do these songs live in you, or are you actively looking for inspiration?
That's a great question. I think early on, I saw songs as something I had to walk into, like they were out there waiting for me. But I couldn't actively spur that process on myself. But you find if you start to get into the craft of songwriting, you find that waiting for lightning to strike isn't going to be a very good way to, keep building furniture or whatever other craft you might be doing. And so over time, I've really enjoyed the functional discipline and process of writing and putting myself at the table with the pencil in hand and not waiting for inspiration, but being available to inspiration. And also, writing more means you write more bad songs, but you also write more good songs. and it allows me to be less precious about each song. When you're first writing, you feel like you've failed if you write a bad song. And now that I've written hundreds of songs, those are just the ones I forget about. And it's really, that is a real release when you start to be able to do that, because you also become less precious about the best songs. It's just another day at the desk. And I go in waves. I can't claim to have that daily discipline 365 days out of the year. But in the times when I'm really either focused on trying to get to some output, or I feel like life is giving me a period of time where I have the space to do it, I'll go about that very seriously of trying to write a song a day and putting myself under that sort of, I don't know if pressure is the right word, but just that discipline.
The discipline, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you, but this is kind of, it's related. You mentioned gospel music and things like that a few times. Are you familiar with a guy named Rich Mullins by chance?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I knew his music when I was growing up.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The youth group, the church, his church stuff. And what's funny about Rich is his most popular song was probably his worst. He had the song called Awesome God, and it's sort of it's the perfect anthem for 80s and 90s Christian subculture, but
sure.
it's like that's the least Rich Mullins song that he ever wrote, Anyway,
Yeah.
But on the topic of songwriting, obviously if you know, he tragically died in a car accident almost 30 years ago now. But I remember he said once about songwriting, these songs are inside him. It's just a matter of whether he has the guts to reach in and pull them out, And I always love that, It's like, because it does take courage, because whether it's a heartbreak, like you said, or whether it's addiction, or whether it's grief, or whatever that inspiration is. That's why I respect you. I respect so many people that you've got the guts to pull these things out.
I appreciate that. I don't see it as particularly courageous, just because and I'm not trying to deflect that compliment. I guess I just think it's, I think it's staying available to the songs that are around. And that's the part that I love about it, is that there really are songs every day. Today I was riding my bike and I turned onto a road that I've probably been on, 50 times. And the road has a certain name, and the first mailbox I saw had that name twice. It was the name of the road. It was also their name. And I just thought, I want to write a song about having your name be the name of the road. Like there's a certain sense of home, a sense of place. If the road is named after your family, a sense of heritage that could go either way. So I haven't unpacked what that song could be, or even what the perspective is on it, but it feels like it's ripe for something to sort of prod. And that's the sort of work away from the desk that we all can do if we're just paying attention. There's conversations we're having day to day. And it's also, again, for me, it's that lesson I have to continue to learn, that it's not magic, and it's not it took me a long time to really own I was a songwriter. I wrote songs when I was in 9th grade, but I didn't consider myself a songwriter until much later, even though I kept writing songs. It was the idea that a person like me writes songs. It took me a while to get over that kind of imposter syndrome, and I still do it to myself, where I'm like, maybe I wrote a couple good songs and I don't know if I have any more in me. But that's the part where it's just, you start writing from nowhere and from nothing. When you don't have anything to write about, you still write. And sometimes that's the song, is that you don't have a song.
Well, that comment was that kind of the inspiration for that song Imposter?
For sure. It was that idea that I never, that notion of authenticity that's maybe a bit of a buzzword in our culture these days, but it's truly something we're all striving for. And I don't know, I studied theater, and so theater, your job is taking on other roles and costumes and looks and accents and identity. And I remember it coming up in college. I got cast a lot in the romantic lead, and so I had been in plays a number of times where I was getting married, or I was kissing the lead actress in the show. And I remember talking to my now wife about getting married, and I was like, I don't know how to do this in a way that feels authentic, because I've acted this so many times that I'm trying to make it seem authentic, that it's in my head that are we going to really be doing this, or is it? And we decided, much to my parents' chagrin, I think, to get married on our own, because of that very thing of I want it to be for us and not for anybody else. I've put on that show so many times. And I think that was one of the things I was thinking about when we started writing that song, was like the show we're all putting on all the time. And when does it stop? And when does it truly stop? And I think we all want to be the authentic version of ourselves, but we're piling on, in so many cases, some projection. And so it can really spin us out sometimes. And that's where that song got started.
All right. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I think, like, for me, you know, again, not a musician, I'm in the corporate world. You know, there's a thing that we talk about, like faking it till you make it, you know?
Yeah.
And it's true. Like I've been now working for a couple of decades. I was a journalist, like we talked about, in Virginia, but now I've been in technology, and, you know, here I am. 20 years ago, I would look at somebody like my age and be like, man, they're so wise. They have so much experience. And now I'm kind of that guy, and I'm like, I don't think I'm that guy, you know?
Yeah.
So it's kind of that thing. Like I kind of have it, you know, I have it too, right? It's, I think that's pretty, it's human nature.
Yeah. Parenting. I mean, I have kids, and that's very much, I feel like part of my job, especially as the kids have gotten a little older, and I see them struggling with, like, do I know what I'm doing? Like, I think our role as parents sometimes is like letting them behind the curtain once they're of an age that they can handle it. But, you know, really saying, like, none of us really know what we're doing. We're all doing our best. Some of us have more experience than others, and we've learned some things, but don't give me too much credit. I'm still really trying to figure this stuff out too.
Yeah. No, that's cool. All right. So a couple more questions about some of the songs. There's the song that's really good called Prodigal Morning. Yeah. The lyric is, I went looking for meaning. Yeah. Now my hope hit a ceiling. So I guess on that, again, I know there's an element of songwriting where it's a little bit of a mystery, but you know, what meaning were you looking for? And, you know, what ceiling did you hit?
Yeah. I think that particular song, it does kind of have this real, well, it has a ballad story to it where our narrator is coming home, and it was kind of this twist on the prodigal son coming back after whatever it was he was out there chasing. In my mind, I think I was imagining a bit of an alternate reality, but still a musician going out there searching and trying to make it in one way or another. And those big dreams of getting out there on the road and performing your music and finding your place, your way to the top or something, and then the realization that it wasn't going to happen, and now you're going back home with your tail between your legs a little bit.
Oh wow, yeah.
So that was kind of the story in my head. Was I'll be there back in the morning, and I'm pretty worse for wear, and I hope you'll take me back. I'm glad that I have a home to come back to. I think that's where that came from. And so yeah, I do think that what I've found in my writing, and these are those lessons I feel like I learned that is a little bit like therapy, is that as I've grown, as I've gotten older, I have found myself writing, even without intentionally directing it there, of some of those, like, you know, questions of the lofty pie in the sky dreams of my youth, you know, and where am I now? There's an upcoming song that it reminds me of on the Steel Wheels record that's called Cold Call, and this song it starts off with a line that just says, I think I'm too old for the sagging pillows on a friend of a friend's sofa bed. And it's just, it's just like kind of like looking back at some of the earliest touring days where you were just happy to be out there. You'd do anything, you'd sleep anywhere. And the realization that, like, I'm not there today. Hopefully I've built a little bit higher expectations than that for myself.
Right. Yeah, you're in your prime, but like not that much on my prime.
Right.
All right, cool. The other one I want to ask you, and I think this may be one of the songs that you alluded to earlier, where it probably wouldn't fit with people around you up on stage with your bandmates, but maybe I'm wrong. I've got some work to do is the name of the song, right? So you say here, I've got some work to do, only I can do.
Yeah.
I guess what's the work, that you need to do?
Yeah. I think that definitely was one of the songs that felt, I don't think I ever took that one to the band. I think for me that the notion of that song is whatever the work is. I think in my mind it was recognizing that I need to do some work on myself and nobody else is going to do that for me. Some of that is recognizing the limitations, recognizing my own limitations, recognizing the limitations of time. There's a line, I think, in the first verse about everywhere I go, I'm still choosing somewhere to leave. And it's that recognition and trying to accept that we all have to make choices. And even that simple thing of I'm going to focus my energy here on this career or on this goal I have ahead of me. But whatever that is, it means I'm not working on whatever's behind me. And that is, to me, that very basic acceptance is work. And that it doesn't have to be regret, but it does have to eventually be accepted that you've made those choices and nobody else can do that for you. It's the work you have to do.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty deep for Bluegrass. A little guy on a banjo, right?
Yeah. No, man, that's always been my goal. I always loved Leonard Cohen. I always loved Townes Van Zandt, John Prine. There's a lot of depth in those poets, and some of them are funny and goofy, and many are the most poignant words I've ever heard.
Yeah. Well, when I think of Bluegrass, again, this is not meant to be anything, right? Not negative or anything, but I don't really think of songwriting, right? I think of musicianship. I think of history. I think of collaboration, family, like we talked about earlier. I don't think of songwriting. And so I think you're a great example of applying other models and other artists, to that world. I do want to ask you, because Bluegrass is such a generational genre, but there's always a thread, right? Scruggs, Hot Rise,
Sure.
Tim O'Brien, a little bit, Steep Canyon Rangers, Steel Wheels, Leftover Salmon. I guess, do you see you in the Steel Wheels as part of that lineage? And, who are the people that you drew from when you guys started the band?
I think, to your first question, it's hard for me to put the Steel Wheels in the Bluegrass lineage just because, my bandmates and I think are all accomplished on our instruments, but we didn't set out to win any fiddle competitions or banjo competitions or flat picking championships. I think, in that way we might be closer to Green Sky Bluegrass in the sense that they're longtime friends. They came from Michigan. They write a lot of original songs, and that's the crowd that they've developed, rather than a lot of, as you said, bluegrass being often like from a canon of music that came and has been recycled, but it's about this performance and this collaboration and this amazing instrumentation or something. I think I draw inspiration from Daryl Scott and Tim O'Brien, who are very much in that lineage. I also draw inspiration from Gillian Welch and David Rawlings. Steve Earle was an early influence. He kind of got me to Townes Van Zandt, but he also recorded an album with Del McCoury Band. And so I was really getting fascinated by Jerry Garcia and David Grisman through sort of, when I was more into jam music. But the song, that I heard when I was, I don't know, Ellis Unit 1 was this song about death row that Steve Earle wrote for the Dead Man Walking soundtrack in the late 90s, that movie, Dead Man Walking. And Ellis Unit 1 just made me cry when I first heard it. And I think at that time I was also coming of age in terms of being a little bit more politically aware and socially aware, and my sense of how could a government be killing people in prisons just felt, I don't know, just didn't make any sense to me. And that song gave such a human story and experience to it, and that really affected me. And that's where John Prine did such an effective job. Sam Stone, so many of his songs just dig in with a real personal story that also has this universal way of grabbing anybody. And I studied theater. That was kind of my way into music first, was like I wanted to tell a story and I wanted to grab your emotions. And I hear that when I listen to Gillian Welch, some of these other artists I'm talking about, and to me, simultaneously living in Virginia, getting to see people like Doc Watson before he died, and hear the musicianship of this acoustic guitar playing maybe, or seeing amazing banjo play I used to work at a theater called Theater at Limekiln in Lexington, Virginia, and we did live theater 5 nights a week, and then there was one night a week they would bring in a concert, and they had Doc Watson, David Grisman, Sam Bush. It was like every week, it was just like I got to sit and watch these masters. And so that really impacted me. And living in Virginia, I was like, this is the folk music. This is what I should be pulling from. And so I tried to learn the clawhammer banjo, and our band, a lot of us coming from a church background, we knew how to sing harmonies, and that's been a calling card for us. So I love to write with harmony and try to tell stories. And so, yeah, it's whether or not it's bluegrass, that's for other people to decide.
No, I get it. Yeah. So, we talk about Bristol and Virginia. I mean, Gillian, it's 2025. She belongs in 1908.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you can just hear her and picture her in the Lonesome Valley down there. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, she's from LA, right? Like, that's what's amazing is they kind of have this vibe that's so true to them. And I'm also impressed. Like, our band has consciously tried to push ourselves, and our recordings, if you go back to our very earliest recordings and what we sound like now, some people would say that's not even the same band. Gillian, on the other hand, it's like you could put all of those recordings together and it just sounds like this, but every song is a keeper and is worth listening to, and I think that's really an accomplishment.
100%. All right. Well, a couple more questions. I really appreciate your time, Trent.
Sure.
So again, given your history with the Steel Wheels and now with this solo album, all the years, all the songs that you've written, I guess, where do you think you are as an artist in your mid 40s, and where do you want to be?
This is my prime. I mean, I just want to continue writing, and if that's more solo recording and more solo performances, great. I don't want to go anywhere without the Steel Wheels. As long as the five of us can continue to perform together, I do really feel fortunate that we've been together for so long, and it's not an easy thing to keep a band together. And so I feel so fortunate to know these guys the way I do, and to be able to lean on them and know when there's something else that they could give in the studio that they haven't quite gotten to yet, or we just have a shorthand that we can speak, just like you would do with any kind of work, right? If you were on a carpentry crew with the same guys for 20 years, it would be pretty easy to put up the framing of a house, right? And that is really special. And so I just want to appreciate that as long as we have it and keep performing. I want to push those guys too. I want to hear, like, Eric has written some gorgeous instrumentals over the years, and we have put many of those on our records. And I would love for him to do an entire, instrumental album himself, something real pared down with a fiddle or something. Jay also writes great instrumentals, often on the mandolin, sometimes on a guitar, and I want to see him continue to push his creativity. So it's I feel like a real lucky partnership between us that we just sort of found our way into, and it's not, we don't live in Nashville. We don't live in some music hub per se, but it suits me perfectly, and I feel like we're in a really lucky spot.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so this podcast is inspired by the show Ted Lasso. Mm-hmm. So it's, in terms of positivity and empathy and leadership and things like that, and obviously, curiosity. So I'm not a songwriter. I don't play an instrument. I don't sing. So I've always been curious about guys like you, whether you've got 10 billion streams or you've got 2, right? And just what makes folks like you tick. And so that's why I started this podcast. So that's my sort of focus around curiosity, day to day is meeting people like you and asking these questions. I guess, again, at this point in your life, as a father, as a musician, whatever, what are you most curious about?
Well, most curious, let's see. So my other hobby or passion is cycling. I love to ride my bike. And so I would say I'm fascinated and curious about athletes, whether it be I am curious about cyclists themselves, but I'm very fascinated by a life where you're putting your body to the test. I think when I think about being in your prime as a musician, that can be something that, some musicians, I think, just keep getting better the older they get. With sports, there's usually a pretty finite time frame where your prime is and then isn't. And so I'm really fascinated and curious. I was really into sports when I was a kid, and then sometime at the end of high school and through college, I sort of wrote them off. I wasn't that into competitive endeavors. I was totally into the arts and cooperation and still into the arts and cooperation, but I am fascinated now by the life of an athlete. I'm fascinated by the sort of our cultures, like the function of sports and what it means to people, the identity parts, as well as I think this like sociological thing of I think there's a catharsis to watching competition where everybody has to play by the rules, because that's not real life. And so I really think it's this sort of interesting avatar thing for us of like, look, they all have to actually follow these certain rules, and we will know at the end who is better. And I think that feels like there's some control when there's so many things in real life that are pretty out of our control. So anyway, that's something that makes me very fascinated, and I've done a little bit of gravel bike racing here and there, and it's been a fun experience to sort of dip my toe into something completely different from music.
Well, no wonder you look so fit. I mean, cycling, that's not for couch potatoes for sure.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
well, cool. Well, Trent, congrats on the album. This Might Be My Prime is just out here in mid-June of 2025, and congrats on the self-titled album that's about to be released by the Steel Wheels. Look forward to that, and really appreciate your time, man. Congrats on everything, and hope to see you down the road.
Yeah, man, it's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks. All right, thanks, Trent.
All right.